Welcome to the Maria Liberati Show, where food meets art, travel, and life. So what does food mean to you? Let me first say that I hope everyone had a very Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah and is getting ready to bring in a happy and healthy New Year 2022. And I do want to thank everyone out there for joining the Maria Liberati Show and being part of our listening audience and sharing all these wonderful guests that we've gotten to hear from this year. You know, 2021 has really been a banner year for the Maria Liberati Show. Our listening audience has grown 500% and we're heard all over the world. So I also want to thank my producer, Britton Roselle, and my listening audience out there. Couldn't have done it without you. And thanks for sharing and joining in. And as mentioned, you all know the new year is coming in, and all celebrate the new year with wine and champagne besides having delicious foods. Usually a toast is one of the most important parts of the New Year's Eve celebration. So my guest this week is British wine educator and expert Janina Doyle, and I'll also be sharing some expert tips on how to best enjoy your wine and champagne. Something that I've noticed that no one seems to have a clue about is what temperature their wine should be served at. And when I was starting to think about sharing this with you this week, this brought to mind my good friends Gianluca and Velia from a famous little wine bar in Orvieto, Italy called the Champagneria. Now, I'm not sure if it is still there, but I have great memories from visiting the Champagneria in the piazza in Orvieto, Italy. It's a little wine bar, and it's also a place where one can get an education about wines from all over the world. And here's some information that I learned from sommeliers like Gianluca from the Champagneria and other vineyards that I trained at in Italy. The temperature that you serve the wine at is just as important as the quality of the wine itself. You are making a big mistake if you serve a great wine at the wrong temperature. The special qualities of that wine will not be evident. So here are the perfect temperatures that different types of wine should be served at. Champagne should be served at about 14.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Dry white and rosé wines, they should be served at about 18 degrees Fahrenheit. Light red wine should be served at 25 degrees Fahrenheit, but aged red wine should be served at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. And lastly, sweet wines and liqueurs should be served at 14 or 15 degrees Fahrenheit. If the wine is too cold, pour it in a glass and leave it there for a few minutes to warm up. The glasses the wine is served in are just as important. Clear, transparent glasses are the best so that one can experience the wine, but also a glass that has a long stem is best to serve wine so that your fingers do not touch the part containing the wine and do not modify the temperature of the wine in any way. Dry spumante and champagne should be served in a flute so that one can see the bubbles and the perfume of the wine is released slowly. However, sweet champagne and sweet spumante should be served in a cup-like glass. This is really this season for grapes, and they're at their best. My favorite recipe for taking advantage of the luscious grapes that we just had from the fall harvest, of course we're not harvesting now, but we did as a fall harvest, is a risotto with white grapes and white wine. It reminds me of being at a farm in Tuscany where I did many cooking programs, and the crisp autumn evenings and the warmth of the risotto. As the old Italian saying goes, to make a friend, a glass of wine is enough. To maintain the friendship, you need a whole bottle. And here's my recipe, which is a great recipe for New Year's Eve. It's a risotto with white grapes. And you know, one of the traditions is at the stroke of midnight on New Year's Eve, you should eat 12 grapes. It will bring you good luck. So this risotto dish is for good luck as well. You're going to start out with a half a cup of rice for risotto. That's carnaroli or arborio rice, half a pound of firm white grapes, 1 slice of a small white onion or 2 leeks, and these should be diced finely, chopped finely. 4 tablespoons of Parmigiano Reggiano cheese, a half a cup of dry white wine or a dry white spumante, 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, 1 quart of vegetable broth. Wash the grapes, cut them in half. If they do have seeds, take out the seeds. Place the olive oil in a saute pan, then place in the finely chopped onion or leeks. When the onion or leeks are transparent, add in the dry rice and let it toast for about a minute. Then add in the wine. When the liquid evaporates, place in 3/4 cup of vegetable broth, stirring constantly. Repeat until the rice is al dente, approximately 18 minutes. However, at mid-cooking, add in the grapes, stir in. Once you've cooked the rice, and again, that it's al dente, remove from the heat. You can add either a small, like a teaspoon of butter, or a drizzle of olive oil, and top with grated Parmigiano Reggiano cheese. Serve immediately. Serve with glasses of dry white wine. Enjoy. Today I'm here with Janina Doyle, and she is a British wine educator, expert, and she's also brand ambassador, and she is the host of Eat, Sleep, Wine, Repeat. Most of our guests about wine have really been about French or Italian, so it's my pleasure definitely to chat a little bit about British wine. So Janina, thank you so much for being here.
No, it's great to be here. And actually, I'm normally on the other side of the podcast asking the questions. So it's kind of nice to be like, I'm just going to sit back and relax. Well, don't ask me too much. Let's not make it too complicated.
So tell us a little bit, I guess, as a primer. So if we want to, just kind of as a beginner to enjoy British wines, can you give us some recommendations on some great British wines and tell us a little bit about them?
Firstly, all of them, go for it. No, but it's one of these things, the industry is growing massively. Now, about 30% is being exported, and one of the most larger markets for exports is USA. So although very little, you are getting some more than many markets.
Wow.
And it's all about English sparkling wine. That is where it's at. Like we could talk all day about some of the quirky, cool things and the still wines coming out of England. And I say England because it's mainly in England and mainly in the south. So we're talking, imagine, so I say English sparkling wine. It's made the same way as champagne. So it's the traditional method. So a second fermentation in bottle. So time on the lees. So when you taste champagne and you get that, croissant, that biscuity, yeasty creaminess that you get with champagne, you get the exact same thing with English sparkling wine. And to put it into context, this is the soils all in the south of England. They're on the same Paris basin, if we talk in geological terms, as Champagne. So the same chalky soils. So there's a lot of similarities, and about 70% of the wines coming out of, I say, Great Britain, but like literally 98% is in England. So 70% of those wines is English sparkling. So everybody listening in America, it's all about the fizz. You got to literally get popping, get cracking. Get a bottle.
So is there like a couple that you would recommend for us to try?
Yeah. I tell you, I'm going to recommend two. I mean, I could literally recommend all day, but I'm going to recommend two because I am 99.9% sure that they are in America. One is Night Timber. And any English wine expert will talk to you about the Nightimber effect. So this is basically, imagine they were on their second vintage when they produced a 1993, their classic cuvee, which sells for here now around £35 a bottle. And it won best sparkling wine of the world with the International Wine Spirit Challenge. So people started paying attention. Anyway, they've got better and better and better. They're the most quintessential wine estate in England. Like King Henry VIII used to own the Nightimber estate. It was mentioned in the Doomsday books. I mean, I know that some Americans like history and English history and the royal family, like this is the one to go for. And the quality's only just got better and better. So 2018, the female winemaker, Cherry Spriggs, won best sparkling winemaker of the world. And she was the first non-champagne winemaker and first woman to win, and that was with International Wine Challenge. So Nightimber is definitely one to try and tick off your list, and you should be able to find some.
That sounds really interesting. Yes. And you said there was a second one too? Or?
Okay, so second one of my personal favorites, Ridgeview. Ridgeview, and both of these are down in the south of England. Ridgeview started just a few years after. So Nightimber actually started planting in 1988. So I mean, we've actually been around for a while. But, so you know, but Ridgeview started planting in 1995. Both of these wineries are entirely dedicated to sparkling wine only. So they plant Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier. So the three champagne varieties. So that's their focus, and that's all you're going to get with them. And Ridgeview themselves, I mean, they get served at the royal banquets by the Queen. In recently, they've won best winemaker and best wine producer as well, you know. So these are the two. And Ridgeview, I believe, is the highest exported wine out of the country. So that one may be the easiest one, fingers crossed, to find in America. But definitely check those out, because I think that will give you the best example of what England can do. And they, by far, they compete perfectly with champagne. It's not a step down. They are
they do. Wow. So that's what I was going to ask, like, what's the difference between, say, a French champagne and an English sparkling? So you're saying they can compete very well with them.
100%. I mean, if you say the difference, remember, England is about 0.5 degrees Celsius cooler. So the idea is that with champagne, they're slightly richer, and say English sparkling wine might be a little bit crisper, and say the less ripe flavors like green apples. However, with global warming and climate change, if anything, we're now in this perfect position of great temperature. And I know that champagne are potentially worried that it's going to get too warm. So but in terms of flavor profile, they are made the same way, and they are so similar. And because of those chalky soils, that finesse, and I'm going to get very wine geeky now, but the minerality that is in champagne that we love, we have it in English sparkling wine. And there are traditional method wines made all over the world. You have Schramsberg, amazing traditional method in California. That's really, really fantastic. You have loads, but they're not going to have quite the same soils. So if you want the closest thing to champagne, but it's still unique in its own way, then English sparkling wine is one to try.
That's really very, very interesting. And then I guess kind of quickly, because we don't have much time, but any suggestions on some quick things to pair with these two?
Well, okay, champagne in general, my favorite pairing, and this is such a British pairing, fish and chips. I mean,
there you go.
You've got to be able to get fish and chips. Do you have fish and chip shops around the corner?
Yes, they're all over. But I do want to say, so my listening audience is actually not just in the US. We're in France, we're in Australia, we're a little in the UK and Canada. So I do have, I mean, the largest portion of my listening audience is the US, about 70%, but the rest is kind of divided up all around the world. But in the US, yes, fish and chips is, and I know when I've been to England, the fish and chips there are just amazing. So
just like with champagne, English sparkling wine, it's that really high acidity, that beautiful effervescence, that freshness. It just cuts through fattiness and oil. So anything deep fat fried is just going to be perfect. And of course, champagne and fish, is perfect. So fish and chips is number one, without a doubt. Anybody wants, and there's something amazing about having a slightly more premium bottle of wine. These are not cheap, unfortunately, are they? Whether it's champagne, whether it's English sparkling wine, you're probably looking at $50 plus, whatever. But then you have just a nice, just not very expensive fish and chips, and you can just sit back and relax. And the two, opposites attract, and it's
well, that would really make sense, because I know with Italian wines, a lot of times it makes sense when you pair them with where where that wine comes from, with the local traditional food in the sense. So that would make a lot of sense. And I could just see, oh my gosh, that would be absolutely yummy. So it would make a really yummy pairing. That's great. So Janina Doyle, tell us where can we find you?
You can find me. I mean, I'm caught off guard. Where can you find me? So the podcast is called Eat, Sleep, Wine, Repeat, and it's on Apple Podcasts, it's on Spotify, it's on everywhere. And you can go to my website, because I do virtual wine tastings, of course, for those that are not in the same country, and I do wine education classes, so parties and fun, whether it be corporate or private. You can just go to the website www.eatsleepwinerepeat.co.uk. It's pretty easy.
Yes, definitely.
Keep sleeping, keep whining, and just repeat it. That's it.
Yes. That makes a lot of sense. I love that title. Well, Janina, I'm sure we'll have you back again. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. And definitely check out her podcast and blog, Eat, Sleep, Wine, Repeat. Thanks for listening to the Maria Liberati Show. And once again, thanks to my producer, Britton Roselle, and my special guest this week, British wine expert Janina Doyle. And wishing everyone a healthy and happy New Year. And thank you all for joining me in 2021, and again making this a banner year for the Maria Liberati Show. And thank you for joining me in welcoming all these wonderful guests. I also would like to thank all of my guests that I've had on this year, 2021. Thank you all for joining me and making this a really exciting year for me. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show, our listening audience has grown 500%, so I couldn't have done it without my listeners, and also all the wonderful special guests. So thank you all. Thanks for sharing. And as always, you can find me at marialiberati.com, on Twitter at Maria Liberati, on Facebook at Chef Maria Liberati, on Instagram at Maria Liberati, on Pinterest at Maria Liberati, on LinkedIn at M Liberati, on YouTube at the Maria Liberati channel, and on my Roku channel, The Basic Art of Italian Cooking by Maria Liberati. Please join me in the new year, where we will have, I promise, more exciting guests in food, wine, culture, art, history, and life. Please join me. And once again, Happy New Year. And as always, until next time, peace, love, and pasta.